Cheers, guys. Epix 911, welcome to the Elitist Geek VR news for Thursday, September 15th, 2016. Start off with a quick note of clarification. And my bad yesterday for not referencing the video where in the past I'd mentioned kind of my beef with the AR, VR news reporting, which in a nutshell, for anybody who hasn't watched those older videos, boiled down to my frustration being AR and VR were always treated as competitors by the media. Anyone who reports on them, not anyone, but a lot of the people who've been reporting on the technologies do so with the tone that they're locked in some kind of battle, some kind of one is going to win and go forward and the other, the other one will be the loser, never to be heard from again, when that is absolutely not the case. They are fundamentally different. They offer different experiences. Are there some similarities, spiritual cousins? Sure. But that doesn't mean one comes at the cost of the other, that they have to be mutually exclusive. And that was the irritation in my report on Tim Cook, for example. I know, and some of you probably know, that the business side of the argument was what he was referring to. It made economic sense to pounce on AR first, then entertain VR in the future. The tone, however, for anybody who isn't aware of that, is going to sound like they chose AR over VR. And again, that was the main concern. I like AR. I'm way more passionate about VR. The end result, frustrating when you hear it reported that way time and time again. So there you have it. Kind of excited about this one. I had mentioned a long time ago, probably close to 3.5 months ago on the channel, that I would be doing a VR build. Start to finish, show you the parts, go through the actual installation process of the hardware, the software. And yeah, I understand there's some of you out there as technical as me, if not more technical, but there's people who have asked for this and are genuinely interested in seeing a computer get put together for VR. So I'm going to start working on that today. I've got the parts, and look for that. Probably be multiple parts. And unlike the Onward one, which has its own reason for not having a part 2 yet, they will be up in quick order, probably just days apart. Hopefully not even days, though. Now, let's start, as I indicated yesterday, with just some games news. There was a game on the Dreamcast called Rez, and Rez was one of my favorite games. It was fantastic. It had a great driving beat. It was psychedelic without being kind of too over-the-top Jeff Minterish. If you don't know who he is, Google him. And then it'll all make sense. So it just kind of walked that perfect balance for me of a game that I could play, completely just tune out and just get in the zone, where you just, that awesome place where you're just on autopilot. So super happy when I heard about it coming out for the Sony PlayStation VR. Easily going to be a day one purchase for me, and plays into the strengths of the Sony. So I had my concerns, like, I've been mentioning, about the PlayStation 4 Pro, about the regular PlayStation 4. Rez is going to play to the PlayStation 4 strengths, not its weaknesses. Its weaknesses being super high poly counts and in-depth textures, because this game isn't about that. And like I also indicated yesterday, ultimately it's the gameplay that's going to matter. People are going to be able to overlook some of those power shortcomings on the PlayStation 4 and Pro with the VR experience if the games are good. Rez has the opportunity to be at the forefront of being that type of game. And when I say it plays to the strengths, take a look at the graphics. I probably posted a screenshot. There's definitely going to be a video in the link below. Line graphics, yes, neon-y type, simple textures, but the game is about the gameplay. It's about pacing. It's a rail shooter that's all about the experience. So super stoked about that. That, like I said, it was just, if you haven't played it and you have a PS2 or a Dreamcast, do yourself a favor, give it a go. In my opinion, the Dreamcast version was the better of the two back in the day, but easily worth playing, holds its age like almost no other game. So fantastic, looking forward to that. Next, we have a game for both the Vive and the Rift. It's called Crowe the Drowned Armory, and it's from the Rogue Initiative, and it's being built using the Unreal 4 engine. Not a lot of details out on this game other than the screenshots, and I'm going to show some of those screenshots here for the game. Looks great, but as I find out more, I will report it here. And then we have Luna, which is a narrative puzzler style game, and it's supposed to kind of play on emotions in that you're a bird who's lost trying to find your way home. So I know that doesn't sound like the most adult theme. You're a little birdie, really? But the concept is awesome. It's about dealing with grief and trauma, and again, it's being done in such a way that you don't have to have a beast of a machine to run it. So looks really good. It's going to be a Vive game, and yeah, just looks fantastic. And Rift as well, I believe. But I can confirm. I'll have that in the link below. Just kind of still on the game front, I'd mentioned the 8 games on the PlayStation demo disc. Well, and I'm hoping this is not a case where people in the UK are shafted. They still may offer those, but as things stand right now, North Americans got their version of the PlayStation VR demo disc knocked up to 18 games. So I will have a picture up here. The games you see with asterisks beside them, those are the stock 8 games that you're going to get in North America and in the UK. The ones without the asterisk are the balance, the ones that are so far only on the North American side of the equation. So like I said, that could just be they had X number of discs manufactured for that region already, and they may just be offering the rest from the PlayStation Store directly. That would be my gut, not that the UK got shafted. So if anybody in the UK knows more about that, please chime in below. Let me know. I'm curious. But right now, as things stand, there's no word on if the additional 10 games will be available for those in the UK. There was a survey that went out, and unfortunately, I don't have a copy of the survey. I tried looking for it. I'm going to try some more. And this was reported on Upload VR, and it had some interesting data. So it was a VR-centric survey, and it asked, or it had some categories, and the categories were inadequate content offerings, consumer business reluctance to embrace, and so forth. The number one reason on the survey for not adopting VR was inadequate content offerings. And it's what we talk about, so it makes sense. We've said that so many times here, myself, you guys, that we need a killer app, but more importantly than a killer app, we just need some damn good games. And there is a few of them out there, but there's not enough. There's just not enough. And I'm a horrible example for that because I own both units, so my range of choices is going to be much wider than the average person. So I get that there's people sitting on their devices or not wanting to purchase one. They just simply don't see the games/experiences, at the level that they want. And it was interesting, lack of financing, i.e. cost, was actually the lowest, 5%. If you would have told me about the survey before, my gut would have said, well, mostly cost, probably. Content, I would have put in the top 2 or 3. But yeah, cost, I would have definitely had probably number 1, if not number 2. So surprised to see that number 5. And the others that we have, technical limitations, 20%, 9% said other, and like I said, 5% lack of financing. So like any survey, take that with a grain of salt. I'm going to try to find out some more on that, and I will, hopefully by the time I edit this, have it posted below for you guys. Now, this video is classic. You guys have to check the link. Definitely deserves a bit of beer. It's a video of Luckey Palmer, and it's from a Japanese VR Twitter account. And Luckey has already acknowledged that it was him in the video. But get the irony of this, guys. He's wearing the HTC Vive, and if I was, just a wee bit embarrassed with my bejesus when I got scared in the horror games, I got nothing to be worried about if you listen to Luckey go at it here. He wails like a freaking banshee in this. And props to him for manning up and admitting it was him, because enough of his face was obscured he could have said, you know what, just a tourist who looks a lot like me. But props to him for manning up and acknowledging it was him. But holy blood-curdling, female-esque scream. Nothing wrong with that. Anyone who has a high-pitched voice, I'm just saying. Funny as hell. Have a look at it. Check it out. Next up, Sega Europe's president has just come out with a statement that VR has caught the whole company's attention. So that is fantastic news. And sure, it's not a AAA publisher. I mean, some people may still consider Sega that. It's sad to see how far the mighty have fallen. And I'm still one of those people who's just, hopeful, delusionally hopeful that at some point in the future, Sega will do hardware again, whatever it may be, because I love their hardware. I love the Genesis. I like the Saturn, Dreamcast. So for them to say that VR has caught their attention, that's good, because their games haven't been grabbing people's attention lately. They've pretty much destroyed the Sonic IP, and I really can't think of any IP that they've had that they've actually done good by since they dropped hardware from their portfolio. Because my initial thought would have been, and was, wow, all this effort can just get focused in on games. This is going to be the Genesis, Saturn, golden age of Sega games again, and the arcade games. Hasn't turned out that way, in my opinion. There haven't been a hell of a lot of good Sega games. That's just the truth. So what I like about his comment is, and you don't have to look further than the Dreamcast or the arcade machines that actually used the Dreamcast hardware inside them. And I'm talking about rail shooter. Sega had at least a dozen rail shooters of decent quality between the Saturn, Dreamcast Home, and Dreamcast Commercial, which usually overlap the two. There was no shortage. I mean, House of the Dead 1 and 2, Silent Scope, Virtua Cop, Crypt Killer, Area 51, Maximum Force. All of those would be day one Insta VR ports, in my opinion, and would just be amazing. You wouldn't even have to change the formula much. You could keep it on the rails, kind of like Hordes or Hordes Z does. Or you open it up a little bit and allow a bit more freedom to walk. Keep it as linear, but have the freedom that maybe that's the only direction you can go in, right? But so many of those classic light gun games of Sega's would just be natural fits. Like, to the point, if they made or drew the line in the sand to start with VR gaming next week, they could have half a dozen projects going in VR. And maybe it's one team handling all 6 even, because it would be similar engine requirements. So imagine that, like a compilation disc, Sega's greatest light gun hits in VR. personally, I'd pay for that. 30, 40 bucks for 6 to a dozen of Sega's best light gun games. Sounds good. Let me know your guys' thoughts on that. And the other story I talked about yesterday was the Oculus Guardian system. Well, details of that are actually on the Oculus dev website now. And I'll have the link for sure. I may have a picture up that kind of just summarizes the steps. But the steps are, I mean, pretty much substitute Rift with Vive or the other way around. And you've got the same steps that you did with, to initiate room scale on the Vive. So very, very close and all but confirmed the inevitable. And if you look at the timing, the changes that they made to the software on the tracking side, if you look at this, all the signs are pointing to a November touch release. So the more I hear about this kind of stuff, the more I'm believing that German reseller was right with the price and the timing. So very cool. Speaking of the HTC Vive, Amazon has announced that they will be offering the HTC Vive on US Amazon website. So very cool, another avenue. And I said that months ago, the supply chains for these units need to be opened up. You need to have demos every frickin' place you can think of. And I understand there's a cost associated with that, but hell, have your resellers. I can still walk into Best Buys here in Canada and there's no VR demoed. Like, why is that? Why is it in the States? And even there, I hear it's not in all Best Buys. That should be nationwide, every chain. And same thing with retail options. Those retail options should be available. So when people are ready to pry open the purse strings, they've got other avenues to buy. Some people just don't like ordering online. That's the reality. And it's not even necessarily an age thing. There's just people not comfortable with it, whether it's paranoia, conspiracy theories, whatever. I know a lot of people, they're just not comfortable with it. So having retail options, it's just a no-brainer, guys. Get your products out there. Broaden those supply chains. We need to get these units out there, especially if, as they say, based on the flat summer sales, they've got lots of stock now. Well, unload it. Get it out there. And then the last story has to do with a product called Subpac. And this is really cool in the way it works. So it uses very low frequencies, so like 40 kilohertz range and lower, to create haptic feedback, which apparently just really, really adds to the immersion. Fortunately, the article doesn't really get into how, and I'm not enough of a sound scientist to kind of pitch in with my own theory even on that, but apparently it really, really adds to the immersion. As I find out more about that, about Subpac, I will let you guys know. So I'm going to start working on building that VR machine, guys. As always, cheers, and definitely catch you on the VR flip side.